What's up, Guardians? I am your host, Phoenix, and welcome to NTAT. I'm gonna get right to the point. After the final shape, Destiny 2 is dead. I don't mean that as hyperbole or clickbait. I mean that once the Light and Darkness saga ends, a metric ton of players are gonna walk away from Destiny 2, myself included. The fact that Bungie had to lay off some of their best talent working on Destiny, plus entire departments that was dedicated to supporting the game in some way, shape, or form, means they are not ready to produce the content to sustain a player base after the final shape. If you believe Destiny 2 with all its many flaws and problems will be able to continue with only these episodes Bungie has announced, then you're sadly mistaken. The only way Destiny as a franchise can survive is through a complete refresh in the way of Destiny 3, and I'm going to go over the reasons why. A cohesive vision. Destiny has never had any real direction from the moment it launched. Famously, we remember the court documents on Destiny 1 that revealed that Bungie rebooted the game in its final hour, which explains why the campaign felt so disjointed, and it took up to the Taken King, which was found out to be cut content, to really get the story rolling. But even outside of that, when Destiny launched, it introduced players to the Light and Darkness in 2014. Bungie themselves did not know what the Darkness was until Destiny 2 Shadowkeep expansion, which launched in 2019. Which is why Bungie would say that the Light and Darkness saga began then. Let that sink in for a moment. Bungie did not know who their own game's main antagonist was for the first 5 years of Destiny's lifecycle. Much like Destiny 1, Destiny 2 was rebooted late in its development, and when it was released was a completely different type of game. It was a slower, more balanced game, which led players to believe this was Destiny's attempt to throw in their hats at esports. They also fixed the complaints about random rolls by making all gun drops static. The issue? Much like the Darkness, they launched the game without knowing what to do when players got duplicate guns. Luke Smith at the time said they were looking into ways to make duplicate drops interesting. Well, to me, that statement is what was interesting. I would think that it was something you would want to figure out before you put the system into the game, not after it's in your players' hands. Well, how did they fix it? They didn't. They went back to random rolls. From there, the game has attempted to be many things and operate in many ways. An esports shooter, power fantasy game, MMO, roguelike, etc. One minute you're overpowered, able to crush enemies with your Nova Bomb in succession. Next, everything is nerfed into the ground and you're playing a shooter with light RPG elements. At one point, you could jump into Destiny and play a few hours and come back when you had time. Then they decided that Destiny had to be your full-time job, or you missed out on everything you were working for, aka FOMO. If you look up throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks in the dictionary, you will see a picture of Bungie and Destiny. If Bungie wants Destiny to continue after the final shape, they will need to have a vision and build the game from the ground up with that particular vision in mind, without rebooting the game in its final hour. New player onboarding and continuation. Destiny 2 has the worst new player experience of any live service game to date. Now, a lot of that is because it's also the longest running one, given that Destiny gave birth to live service genre. Here's the thing. I think they forgot that they need new players in order to keep the game running. I think some exec, probably the same one who thought over monetizing the fan base after a horrible expansion was a good idea, decided that they had all the whales they needed and said, don't worry about new players. I have been wanting to get Titan into Destiny for the last 2 years, but there's just no good starting points. The game is a mess that only long-term Destiny fans understand. They have vaulted so much vital content, including the Destiny 2 original campaign. Think about that. Destiny 2 doesn't allow you to play Destiny 2. Like, there's no real reference point for new players. During the Lightfall expansion, Destiny went free to try with what they called the New Light missions. But since then, they have vaulted a lot of older content that should be free. If you're going to state that the Light and Darkness saga started with Shadowkeep, then why are you trying to charge $20+ for a 4-year-old expansion that would be the perfect starting point for a new player? This is why Destiny 3 is needed, so players have an onboarding point. But this isn't enough. After a couple of years, new players will be in the same position they are now. So there needs to be a plan for content that will always be present in such a way that new players can work their way through and feel it's relevant. I would like to point out my experience with Warframe. I originally started playing Warframe in 2016 for a couple of months. I have not played since. Earlier this year, in January as a matter of fact, I jumped in and started fresh. Ton of content to work through, including the beginning campaign that explained who I was and what was going on. A ton of new and improved content was there, but a lot of it I remember from my first time jumping in 7 years prior. Destiny needs to be able to welcome new players no matter when they decide to try the game out. It can't be this, if you did not start with us from the beginning, you can't play type of mentality. Big leaps versus incremental steps. Destiny is almost a decade old, and what the game has basically settled on is incremental steps forward. Most of the time these steps are good, but as a long-time frequent player, this never feels fresh. When there are changes to the game that need to be made, it has taken multiple seasons or even years to put into place. New simple quality of life things like loadouts or in-game LFG either hits the game after 7 or 8 years or still being worked on. What this feels like in-game is we take baby steps forward, which means the game has always felt about the same no matter what big new thing the expansions brought with it. Destiny 3 would solve all this by allowing the team to start the game with a fresh feel. Nobody wants to fight the same enemy races we've been fighting for the past decade. How about taking us to a new system, new galaxy? Time to bring in new subclass, or rather new classes, not just new subclasses, or at least reinvent what it looks like to be a warlock, hunter, or titan, as they all basically feel the same. Subclasses could be replaced with new elements and themes like wind, water, earth, or poison, blood, transformations. How about guns? For a space shooter with crazy aliens, we sport a lot of conventional weapon types. How about expanding that past the exotics? Let's fix the shield issue with enemies and give us full-blown elemental resistance and weaknesses so we can have all the elemental weapons and really get creative with how they function with the classes. I could spend days going over all the improvements they can and should make that would give a better foundation for the game that aspires to be an MMO light. Oh, let's not forget that we need dedicated servers for PvP and more stability so we're not seeing new era animals every few activities. With all the Bungie drama, distrust, and the condition that Destiny 2 has been in, I don't see how the final shape, even if it blows us away, could change the fact that players will be done upon its ending. A lot of us just want to see the conclusion of the saga we have been invested in for 10 years, and that's about it. Destiny will need a new start, and Destiny 3 is the only option that can make that happen.